Progress Test 3. How? Questions.
How are you doing today? How's everything going? How have you been lately? How's your family? How was your weekend? How was your day? How do you feel today? How's work treating you? How was the party last night? How's your new job? How do I turn this on? How do you spell your last name? How do I get to the train station? How do you make this soup? How do I use the coffee machine? How do you say hello in French? How do I open this jar? How do you solve this math problem? How do I reset my password? How do you stay so fit? How much is this shirt? How many people are coming? How much water should I drink? How many siblings do you have? How much time do we have? How many times have you been there? How much sugar do you want in your tea? How many languages do you speak? How much does it cost to park here? How many pages is the report? How long is the movie? How often do you exercise? How long have you lived here? How often do you visit your parents? How long does it take to get to the airport? How often does the bus run? How long is the flight to Tokyo? How often do you check your email? How long will you stay in New York? How often do you eat out? How old are you? How big is your apartment? How far is the beach? How tall are you? How fast were you driving? How hot is it outside? How deep is the pool? How heavy is this box? How wide is the desk? How spicy is the food? How do you like your steak? How do you like your coffee? How do you want to pay? How was the movie? How do you find the weather here? How do you like your new house? How do you feel about the proposal? How do you want your haircut? How did you like the concert? How would you like to spend your birthday? How do I get to the lobby? How was your flight? How do I find my gate? How do we get to the island? How is the traffic today? How do I book a room? How do I call a cab? How far away is the nearest gas station? How do I pay for the toll? How was your trip to Italy? How do we solve this issue? How did the meeting go? How do I contact the manager? How do you handle stress? How do I submit my expenses? How much progress have we made? How do you pronounce this word? How do I print a double-sided document? How do you want me to format this? How did you get into this field? How do I fix a leaky faucet? How do you keep your garden so green? How do I clean this rug? How do I set the alarm? How do you use this blender? How do I change the light bulb? How do I get this stain out? How does the oven work? How do I connect to the Wi-Fi? How do I organize my closet? How did you know it was me? How does this work? How can I help you? How did you find out? How do you know him? How is that possible? How do you stay so positive? How did you get that scar? How come you didn't call? How should we celebrate?